Okay, hey everybody, what's up? It's me, Emily. Welcome back to my channel. This is the first video I've done in my normal spot in like a month, I feel like. So happy to be back by my TBR cart with another monthly reading wrap up for February. So this month was a little different for me in terms of reading. I was in California for 2 weeks on vacation with family. By the way, like 2 weeks in February is like the whole month. You know what I mean? February is so short anyway. So even though it was a leap year, you know, we just did a lot of stuff together. And rather than like reading when I woke up or reading before I went to bed, like we were all kind of like hanging out and spending time with each other. We were in Palm Springs and we were in Santa Barbara, then we were in LA. We're moving around so much. I wanted to be present. I wanted to see everything. I did read 8 books, so like number-wise, it's not bad. Like, these monthly wrap-ups, sometimes it's like, oh, like, look at all the books I read. Aren't I amazing? Like, I read so many books and I read so fast. And I think it's also important to remember that like quality over quantity is a really important part of the reading experience, because if you're not being transported somewhere and you're not learning something or taking something in, it's kind of like, what's the point? So this month, I try not to push myself too much with reading. I've been averaging like 11 books, 12 books a month. I feel good about March. I just did my TBR video for March. I did my boyfriend chooses my TBR video, so you can check that out if you haven't seen it yet. It was really fun to have him on the channel, and I'm actually really excited about the books that he picked. Speaking of TBR videos, my February TBR video, I've been really good about reading pretty much all of the books that I choose on my TBR videos. Sometimes I read 5 out of 6. I usually read 6 out of 6. I think this month I read 2 out of the 6. Hold on one second, let me look. Oh, I have my little graphic here. Yeah, I read 2 out of the 6. And that's okay. It's okay. You know, I'm not going to be too hard on myself, but I just wanted to acknowledge that, and it won't happen again. Okay, so let's just get into it. Oh, I forgot. So the first book I'm going to talk about, I actually finished at the end of January, but I didn't include it in my January wrap up because I hadn't finished it by the time I filmed my January wrap up, which was like the second to last day of January. So let me just run and get that one second. Okay, so the last book I read in January was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is a huge book, and so is the sequel, which I plan on reading, Ruthless Vows. Yeah, these are huge books, this duology. Now, about a month later, I don't really remember much about it. Like, the characters didn't really stick with me. I'm not like dying to get into the second book. It's about this girl. Her brother goes to war. Her mother is like an alcoholic. It's coming back to me now. Her mother's an alcoholic. What's her name? Iris. She has this job writing, and her kind of like arch nemesis is this kid who's a bit of like a nepo baby, and they're in this like competition together, like a writing competition created by the boss to see like who's gonna get the big promotion. There's this war going on. Are there lies being told about the war? She's writing letters to somebody while all this is going on through this like wardrobe, and so she doesn't know like who's responding to the letters and like who she's actually writing to. Her only friend is like this pen pal that she's writing to. I rated it 3.5 stars. Yeah, now that I'm like recalling it, it's a very sweet book, and it definitely starts in one place and ends in a completely different place, and I love books like that. It's a quick book, and I would recommend reading it. Like, I wouldn't say skip it. It just didn't like absolutely hit for me like I think it does for a lot of people. I did like it, and the cover's pretty cute. So the first book I read in February was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This was my first Lynn Painter book, and I really loved it. It was I think it was YA. I think it's a YA book. It's about this girl, I think, I'm trying to like remember. It is really hard to remember like all the details to these books that you read like a month ago and you've read like 8 books since. It's just like, wait, where am I? Yeah, but it's about this girl, I think. Her mom passed away like a few years ago. She lives with her dad. She really like bonded with her mom through a love of like rom-coms. Okay, yeah, coming back to me again. It's coming back to me. So this guy, he moves back to her town. They're in high school now. And she had like this massive crush on this guy like growing up. She, I think, kind of like enlists the help of her arch nemesis, this guy who lives next door, different guy, to kind of like help her win the other guy over and get him to ask her to prom. It's just like a cute little YA rom-com. Lynn Painter's a great writer. I love the characters' voices and the characters, and it was fast moving and it was sweet. I might have cried like once. I'd recommend it if you haven't read any Lynn Painter. Like, Better Than the Movies is a great place to start. I rated it 3.5 kind of for the same reason as Divine Rivals. Like, once I put it down, I haven't really thought about the characters characters' sins. I do recommend it, and it was fun, and I had a good time reading it. Next book I read, I did a whole reading vlog for, but this is spoiler free. My reading vlog had spoilers. Crescent City, House of Flame and Shadow. I don't know how to describe this book truthfully without giving any spoilers whatsoever, so I'm not going to. I gave it a 5-star. This was epic. The ending was a little like, okay, but other than that, like, I don't even care. It was epic. I would say if you have not gotten into fantasy, Sarah J Maas is a great place to start, and I would start with the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. Then I would read the Throne of Glass series, and then I would read the Crescent City series. The Crescent City series, it's like an urban fantasy. I would say it's definitely the most complex world building out of all 3 of Sarah J Maas's series. Oh my god, this book is so beautiful. If you do love Sarah J Maas and you have read this series and her other series, definitely check out my reading vlog for this book. It was so fun to read this. I loved every second of it. The third book I read in February was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. The witches, they all meet every once in a while. Like, I forget if it's like once a year or once every few months. They don't want people to know they're witches, and I think it's the thing that, like, if you're around other witches, it's more likely that, like, you'll lose control of your power or something like that. Anyway, this girl comes across these 3 young witches. I think there's 3 of them, and kind of like gets coerced into possibly like teaching them magic. If you ever read House in the Cerulean Sea, which is another book I read this month, it's very much like of that genre of like, here are these kind of like orphan children, let's care for them and empower them even though they're different and weird. And it was really cute. I would definitely recommend it. Another one I gave 3.5 stars. Since reading it, I haven't really thought about it. It was fun and it was cute. I don't typically love reading about books with children, but this was pretty snug. I liked it. The next book I read was on my TBR in February. It's called Anger, Wisdom for Cooling the Flames, and he also wrote Living Buddha, Living Christ. So it's a book kind of based in Buddhist principles. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This was a really great book, especially with like the election year coming up. I said I just kind of really wanted to read a book about anger and how to deal with it. A lot of things in the world can make you angry, and it just kind of talks about like where anger comes from, how to deal with it, how to not put it on other people. It was a really helpful read, and I think everyone can benefit from this book. It's really quick too. It's a very helpful book in like communication and relationships, and I definitely recommend reading it. The next book I read was First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This was in Reese's Book Club. Gotta say, Reese's Book Club, I really don't enjoy the picks from Reese's Book Club. I will say, caveat here, this was the first thriller I've ever listened to fully on audiobook. I think I've always read thrillers like all the way through the physical copy, so that might have something to do with it. And I was also in Santa Barbara while I was listening to this, so I wasn't like completely as engrossed as I might have been if I wasn't on vacation, but I just like did not care. It just like did not do it for me. The mystery of it was just kind of like not, I wasn't curious about anything that was happening. I didn't particularly care about the main characters. It was kind of like it ended and I was like, oh, that's what happened. Okay, whatever. I gave it a 2 stars. Again, like, I'm not sure if that's because of the circumstances under which I read it or if I just really didn't connect to the book. I usually love thrillers and this one just like did not hit for me for some reason. So I would skip this one, honestly. Okay, the next book I read, as I mentioned, was House in the Cerulean Sea. This is so cute. I love this. Definitely recommend it. I did give it a 3.5 just because, yeah, I haven't been thinking about it since I put it down. It's about this guy Linus, and he works for like the government, I guess, and they send him to kind of like evaluate orphanages. And he has this assignment to go to this island to check out the kids at this orphanage. And the leader of the orphanage, Arthur, these kids are like banished to this island because they're kind of considered like a danger to society. It's just like the snuggest book ever. Like, I definitely recommend it. I think it's a really cute like winter read. So like before like the weather gets nice and you want to go outside, like this is a really good book I think to get snug with like this last kind of stretch of winter. I've been meaning to read it for a long time. My mom actually got it for me. Thank you, Mom. I really enjoyed it. and I thoroughly recommend it. The next book I read is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I was very hesitant to read this book because the title of this book made me feel uncomfortable. Jean-Luc and I have our own business, so I thought maybe it would just give some like fun tips to running a successful business and like connecting with people. I don't know. I just thought I'd give it a try, and I've heard a lot of really great things about the book. Yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. There's definitely like a few things in there specifically for like the winning friends that I'd be like, well, I think your friend should give you more. Like, you have to think about what your friends are also going to give you. For example, one of the things he talked about was, in order to make somebody feel really good, make them think that like you really connected with them and that you had a great conversation, is basically just ask them a bunch of questions about themselves and listen, and just keep asking them about themselves, which is so true. It's a great networking tactic. Like, I remember the first film I did, the director was like, if you ever find yourself like at a film festival or at a networking event, literally just ask people questions about themselves and you will make those connections. Like, that's how you do that. When it comes to making friends, I'm definitely going to need space in that relationship too. So I think it's kind of like winning friends and influencing people, definitely 2 different things. And I don't think all of the principles talked about in this book would apply to networking and making friends. It really is a book on how to be like a good person on your side of the relationship, like how to be a giving person, how to create space, how to make people feel like they're appreciated, kind of like how to get people to do what you want, but in a like non-manipulative way, I guess. Like, for example, if you're the leader of a company and like you want someone to organize a spreadsheet, you can tell them, you're such an organized person, you're the perfect person for this job. I know that when I get the spreadsheet, it's going to be in perfect order, and like you're so good with the fonts and making everything uniform, kind of like setting them up to like be what you want the job to be, so that like they feel like they need to fulfill that expectation, and kind of giving the positive affirmation like before they do it. It was a very interesting book, really just about how to make the people around you feel good in different ways. It's helpful to hear somebody talk about these things, especially, you know, like being on the phone with potential clients and having good business practices and knowing how to talk to people about expectations and just all of that stuff. I hope that made sense. That review kind of felt all over the place, but alas, we'll move on to the next one. The 8th book I read in February was Crying in Hmart by Michelle Zauner. So she's the lead singer of Japanese Breakfast, who I love. Like, I love her stuff. I've been listening to her music for a while. I actually have her first record. The song Boyish is like one of my favorite songs. She did an interview on like breaking down how she wrote it and how she recorded it and all that stuff, like just dissecting the parts of the song. I love her. I think my friend Liam read this book. He said it was really good and recommended it to me, and it's just been all over the place, and I felt it's time to read it. I listened to the audiobook and she narrated it herself. If you want to read a memoir and if there's an audiobook available narrated by the author, I feel like you should always at least try doing that. It just gives you a whole other level of like connection to that person and their story. It's mainly about Michelle's grief. She lost her mother to cancer in 2014. It's not really as much about her music career. That is like very much just sprinkled in the background. It's really about her relationship to her mom and then to her dad after her mom passes away, and just her relationship to grief. It's very honest and very vulnerable, and I just thought it was so beautifully written. I gave it 5 stars. It is weird like rating memoirs and biographies, because it's like, how do you do that? I'd give it 5 stars just because I would. So yeah, those are the 8 books I read in February. It wasn't a bad reading month in terms of like I read 8 books. That's like 2 books a week. As you can see, like I had 2 5-star reads and a lot of like, oh yeah, it was good, but I don't really remember much about it, or like I don't think about it really ever. So sometimes it's not about the amount of books that you read, but your experience reading them and, you know, your ability to really like process what you read and have it stay with you. And I just feel like this month was a little like, it just felt all over the place. But March is already feeling different. So I'm excited to share March's books with you next month. I've read already like 2.5 books. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was fun. I am also an actor, and I should have some fun acting news coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. I am excited. You can follow me on Instagram for more like immediate updates on my acting and stuff, but I will definitely share stuff on here as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.